How did Valkorion make the Eternal Empire into the greatest civilization known to Star Wars? One of the largest military powerhouses in history has been the Eternal Empire, the third faction which arose during the Great Galactic War under the command of an emperor calling himself Valkorion. We are first introduced to this new empire when it follows the story of twin princes, Arcan and Thexan, who went on a campaign with the Knights of Zakuul on the command of their father to disrupt and wipe out the forces of Jedi and Sith alike. There, we got to see the sheer might of a new society, how this thriving world seemed to appear out of nowhere while boasting some of the most advanced technology and weapons the galaxy has ever seen. All of it attributed to Valkorion, who in actuality is the old Sith Emperor Darth Vitiate in disguise in a new form. But how did Valkorion rise to such power after abandoning the Sith Empire, calling it simply failed, making Zakuul into the strongest empire the galaxy had seen at this point? What was it about the way that this Sith Lord ruled which made life on this strange planet so incredibly prosperous? Well, today, let's open a holocron and travel back to the planet of Zakuul to uncover the secrets of the Eternal Empire. In order to understand the power of the Eternal Throne, we are going to have to go back in time, back before Zakuul was the mighty metropolis, and before Valkorion was possessed by Vitiate, which are simply named after their home called Eocath. Much like the Rakata, the Eocath were builders of advanced technology far beyond what the rest of the galaxy was able to manufacture. One of their greatest feats was the creation of a massive industrial complex around a star which they called their home. They were scientists and engineers who spent their life and society building the weapon of mass destruction which they believed would grant them ultimate sovereignty, for seemingly no other purpose than their own curiosity and their own desire to improve. They built it because they could. They were also obsessed with data, collecting as much as they could on their current weaponry and attempting to improve it in the future. The culmination of all of this knowledge would present itself in the creation of what is called the Eternal Fleet. For a very long time, the power of the Eternal Fleet has been shrouded in mystery, but this was the single greatest armada of ships that we have ever seen in the lore. They were highly advanced vessels that were faster than any other known battle cruisers, able to outrun and outmaneuver all fleets that they came into contact with. The Eternal Fleet possessed cloaking technology, something unheard of for ships at this point in the lore, and their weaponry could overpower just about any opposition. The fleet even learned how to move into a very specific formation, combining to unleash one massive attack. But the real selling point of the Eternal Fleet was that it required no crew whatsoever. It was completely automated, operated by sentient droids which were linked by an interface of thrones. There was one throne though that commanded them all, appropriately named the Eternal Throne. Along with the fleet, there were 6 Titan battle droids which were called the Old Gods. These colossal droids would wreak havoc on planets they visited with their massive array of weaponry and their ability to devour life. They were designated by the names of Isaacs, Saiva, Tyth, Avila, Esni, and Nahut. These beings, along with the Eternal Fleet, would bring mayhem to all wild space. Trillions of beings would die out there in the unknown during this period of time, some of them dying for unknown reasons. As the Eternal Fleet had grown so powerful, it was out of anyone's control. It began to wander the wild space, spreading and conquering all planets that it could locate. This would include a world by the name of Zakuul. In order to keep their creation from destroying them, the beings had designed one more ship known as the Gravestone. The Gravestone was fitted with a single weapon known as the Omni Cannon, and during a battle over the planet of Zakuul, the Omni Cannon fired, taking out the entire Eternal Fleet in a single swift move. But this also meant sacrificing the Gravestone in the attack, as they fell to the world below, being lost to time in the planet's many swamps. A swamp that became a sacred location, known as the Eternal Swamp. Liberated from the rule of the fleet, the natives of Zakuul developed into a heavily superstitious people. Their planet was strong in the Force, being nicely balanced between the light and dark, with its people naturally inclined towards the Force. They split off into tribes of warriors led by Force-sensitive leaders, but they all worshipped the Old Gods, believing them to be angry destroyers. The Titan droids ended up becoming the foundation of the Zakuul pantheon, chief among them being Isaacs, the god of death, and the ultimate devourer. Think of how an empire would operate post-Skynet. The Terminators had become their gods. The people of Zakuul believed that their fate was tied to the old gods, and those tribes that fought against this idea were branded as outcasts and exiled from the society of the Endless Swamp. However, their people had one prophecy of hope. An outcast survivor would arise, an outcast, and bring an end to the old gods, ushering in a new age of prosperity. Their legend foretold the coming of a great hero, a liberator from the destruction. And now we return to one Sith Emperor, Darth Vitiate. Vitiate had been shaken and disturbed by the interference of Revan. After the Jedi returned from the galaxy to challenge him, Vitiate became extremely wary of his own immortality. He realized that he could die. He had indeed prolonged his life by using the ritual of Nathema, but Vitiate desired to secure true immortality, not be a demigod, but a god of the Force itself. And this is where he found the secret to essence transfer. But Vitiate didn't want to stop at simply becoming immortal. Vitiate wanted to evolve. He wanted to grow beyond the Sith, to grow beyond perhaps the dark side and the Force. But he realized that he could not achieve this with a galaxy that refused to evolve with him. He was tired of the galaxy as it was. He found the ways of the Sith to be limiting. And after such a long life growing in the power of the Force and gaining wisdom, Vitiate believed that he had grown beyond the Sith. Their ways were too constraining and not conducive to building a lasting empire. Vitiate resolved to free himself of these constraints and build an empire that he believed would be eternal. He had learned of the Eternal Fleet and how it was destroyed on the backwater planet of Zakuul. Vitiate decided to look deep into this, and decided that it would be here where he would build his great new ambition. He split off pieces of his consciousness and his own life force, infusing them within a strong human warrior by the name of Valkorion. Valkorion was a native to the planet. As Vitiate entirely consumed the man's identity and very presence, Vitiate presented himself as Valkorion to the people of Zakuul, proclaiming that he was the outcast savior of old prophecy. Of course, with as powerful in the Force as Vitiate was, and a brand new body, it didn't take much time for him to convince the people through thorough shows of force. Valkorion would end up uniting all of the tribes of the Zakuul people, and invested a great deal of time around the next 100 years, developing their society from the primitive warrior ways into a people group filled with scientists and great engineers. He taught the people. The people of Zakuul were brilliant, as well as they were powerful, so they were quick to conform to the new ways that their savior had ushered in. Valkorion decided to also recycle their Force-sensitive tribe leaders into a group of warriors which would protect and conquer for the eternal throne. And this was the birth of the Knights of Zakuul. According to Zakuulian legend, their savior of prophecy would also be able to give them power known as the Breath of the Dragon. In accordance with this, Valkorion would tie all of the Knights' life force to his own, granting all of them power in the Force that they didn't already have, Vitiate's own power. Though they were a people of science, they still held connections to their old ways and were fanatically loyal to Valkorion, seeing him as a religious figure and nearly a god. Zakuul would experience an unprecedented level of prosperity, advancements in culture, technology, bringing together the most brilliant minds of the people to build a large grand city over the swamp. Valkorion would continue to build on top of the city until its underlevels became known as the Old World, a rough place where the Zakuulians got to live out their more violent tendencies. The upper city, though, became known as the Spire, where the more privileged of the society would live and govern. Ironically, though, the Old World was actually a much safer place than people thought, with their living conditions being leagues above the Coruscant underlevels. There was truly peace and a brotherhood in the lower levels of Zakuul. Finally, it was time to look at the Eternal Fleet, something that Vitiate had grown fascinated by. Valkorion organized as subject of the Knights of Zakuul known as the Scions, as they were gifted in precognition. Using their precognitive abilities, they would look both into the past and the future to locate the Eternal Fleet. The fleet was the true prize that Valkorion sought. Valkorion would also order them to build him a new ship, calling it the Eternal Throne, a starscraper that took an entire generation of Zakuul's greatest minds to construct. And unfortunately for the rest of the galaxy, the Zakuulian people would eventually locate the Eternal Fleet. Valkorion reawakened the ships, and with the fleet at his command, he took to conquering a great deal of wild space. None of the independent militaries could withstand his massive force, and they were all cut off from the Republic. No one even knew of Valkorion or the fleet. The Eternal Empire greatly expanded until it took over the largest portion of wild space. After this, an almost limitless amount of resources began entering into Zakuul, including credits and raw materials needed to expand it further, developing its military technology. Each and every citizen of Zakuul wanted for nothing, given a monthly stipend of credits that would make them among the elite class of the any core world. The people of Zakuul were extremely wealthy now. Even those of the old world, who were considered criminals and rabble, were living aristocratic lifestyles. A Sith Lord actually achieved an era of unfounded prosperity. For the next 100 years until the Great Galactic War, Zakuul experienced a time of unprecedented peace. One of the most vile Dark Lords of the Sith had actually managed to create an empire that did good to all of its citizens and improved a doomed society. Think about that for a second. It's absolutely wild. Violence, of course, would still flourish, as this is where the Zakuulians went to satiate their old warrior instincts deep in the lower levels of their planet. But for the most part, everything would remain strong under Valkorion. This is when the Emperor would select his wife Senya from amongst the Knights of Zakuul, being attracted to her power and her tenacity. Through Senya, he would bring about his 3 children, Arcan, Bexan, and Valen. While it was of course just a means to an end, it's impressive to me that Valkorion was willing to make the lives of everyone around him so much better in a quest for ultimate power. In Palpatine's empire, everything was worse for everyone except the elite, and even they had to jump through hoops most of the time. But under this man, a man who wanted to basically destroy everything and own the Force itself as his possession, built an empire that truly would have been eternal had it not been for the betrayal of one of his sons, the Prince Arcan. It was Valkorion's old Sith tendencies of pitting his sons against one another that would cause the downfall of this great empire. Valkorion had risen above the Sith way, but when he fell back into it, it would utterly destroy him, as it did many Dark Lords of the past and future. But that does not change what he built. This was how Valkorion created the strongest empire in all of galactic history. Ironic to think how successful Valkorion would have been as an emperor had he not had his nefarious plans the entire time. Had Valkorion wanted the best for the galaxy and his people, he would have reigned as emperor and likely gone down in history as a loyal god, a true deity. But of course, Valkorion was in truth always vitiate, tenebrae, a Sith. With that said, Valkorion did do things incorrectly, gaslighting an entire population into becoming his personal cult, but we of course digress. If he wanted to rule as a powerful emperor, even with the darkness as his ally, he had done it. Zakuul was thriving, he owned the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, and the Jedi and Sith were on the verge of destroying one another. But because he didn't count on his own cruelty towards his children, and the betrayal of the Sith coming back to destroy him, Valkorion had enemies on the fronts that he did not expect. Arcan assassinated him, and the Jedi and Sith would unite to destroy the Eternal Family. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of this? What do you think of Valkorion's beautiful empire? The golden age of Zakuul. Had you thought of this before this video? And what are your thoughts on the Lore Keepers deciding to make one of the most powerful Sith Lords in all of the lore, one of the greatest rulers? As always, my friends, thank you so much for stopping by our archives today, and may the Force be with you.